Good morning. The House of Commons has spoken, the Conservative Party has come together, the Rwanda bill has passed. It's now time for the Lords to pass this bill too. This is an urgent national priority. The treaty with Rwanda is signed, and the legislation which deems Rwanda a safe country has been passed unamended in our elected chamber. There is now only one question. Will the opposition in the appointed House of Lords try and frustrate the will of the people as expressed by the elected House, or will they get on board and do the right thing? It's as simple as that. We have a plan, and the plan is working. Last year was the first year the number of small boat arrivals went down. Not just down by a bit, down by a third compared to crossings in the year before. And that's in the context of arrivals being up 80% in Europe over the same period. But to really solve this problem, we need a clear and effective deterrent, so that people know that if they come here illegally, they will be detained and swiftly removed. That's what this Rwanda bill delivers. With all their efforts to block this bill, the Labour Party have shown that they simply don't get it. Their priority is not stopping the boats, but stopping the planes removing people who have no right to be here. They may talk the talk, but they have no plan. If they were in charge, there would be no treaty, no bill. 12 months of progress would be squandered. It would take us back to square one. And I can tell you this for certain, small boat arrivals would go back up. It would mean giving a green light to criminal gangs of people smugglers, that they can keep their deplorable, illegal trade going. It would mean spending millions more every day housing illegal migrants in hotels in our communities. And it would mean more people are likely to lose their lives by tragically drowning in the Channel. That's the consequence of having no plan. That's why we have to stick to our plan. That's why the House of Lords must pass this bill. It's time to take back control of our borders and defeat the people smugglers. It's time to restore people's trust that the system is fair. We are making progress to stop the boats, but now it's past time to start the flights. Thank you. Shall we turn to some questions from the media? Can we start with the BBC?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason from BBC News. The story of the last year is one of you trying everything to improve your political fortunes, being the agent of change, being the face of continuity, and the polls suggest that nothing has worked. Given that your party is continuing to take lumps out of each other, and indeed lumps out of you, is it time for you to say to them explicitly to put a sock in it?
Well, the Conservative Party last night demonstrated that they're completely united in wanting to stop the boats. And this bill passed with an overwhelming majority in Parliament. But more broadly, last year was difficult. It's difficult for the country. We're still recovering from the impacts of COVID, the legacy of backlogs in our public services, also the impact of the war in Ukraine on people's bills. But at the start of this year, we are pointing in the right direction, and we have made progress. And that's why we've got to stick to the plan, because that's how we'll deliver the long-term change that the country needs. That's how we'll build a brighter future for our children and renewed pride in our country. And the plan is working. And you can just look at what's happened on inflation, for example. We set out a clear plan. We've delivered on that plan. And because inflation has been halved from 11% to 4%, we're now able to cut people's taxes. So just the other week, a significant tax cut for tens of millions of people in work, worth £450 for someone on £35,000. So that shows that the plan is working. And if we stick to the plan, we can deliver that positive change for the country. The alternative is that we just go back to square one, because that's all the Labour Party are offering. Keir Starmer hasn't said what he would do differently. He's had 4 years to set out a plan, and he hasn't. And that won't make anything better. And that's why our plan is the right one, and we're going to keep on it and deliver for the country. Next, I'll turn to ITV.
Prime Minister Robert Heston. When you announced a year ago your pledge to stop the boats, the British people didn't think that meant reduce them. They thought that meant reduce them to negligible levels by the general election. That's not now going to happen, is it? And then overnight we've seen more strikes on Houthi missile sites by America. How worried are you that the conflict in the Middle East is widening and deepening?
Thank you, Robert. The British people will obviously judge the progress we're making but I'm actually proud of the progress that we've made tackling this issue. I always said, when I made that first speech, I think you were there, I said, look, this is a difficult problem. Right? It's not going to be solved overnight. There's not one single silver bullet that will fix it. But I'm a Prime Minister who wants to take on the biggest challenges that we face as a country, even if they are difficult, even if they will take time to fix, because that's what leadership is about. I'm not going to take the easy way out. And if you look at our track record, for the first time, the number of small boat arrivals into this country went down. It went down by over a third last year. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because we put a lot of work in and we made a lot of decisions. We've increased the number of illegal enforcement raids by 70%. We're starting to close the bank accounts of 7,000 people who shouldn't be here. We returned 20,000 people back to their own countries last year. We created new deals with France, with Turkey to smash the gangs upstream. And all of that has meant that we can reduce the numbers and that we can show that we're making progress on this issue. But I'm also clear that the only long-term solution to this problem is to have a deterrent. And that's why the Rwanda scheme is so important. We know that deterrence works because we've implemented it with Albania. Our new deal with Albania means that if you come here illegally from there, you will be returned. We returned over 5,000 people last year, and what do you know? The numbers coming from Albania dropped by 90%. And that's what Rwanda will allow us to do more broadly, and that's why it's so important that we pass this bill. So look, I believe we have made progress on this issue, real progress. But I want to stick to the plan. That plan is working, as I've demonstrated, and if we stick to the plan, we'll be able to deliver the change that people want, which is proper security of our borders, an end to the unfairness of illegal migration, an end to spending millions of pounds on hotels. The alternative is that we go back to square one. Right? And that was clear yesterday, and you talked about the debate. The Labour Party have offered no alternative, no plan to tackle this problem. And actually worse than that, you know, when Keir Starmer has been asked about this, he's been asked about the Rwanda scheme specifically, and it's been put to him, even if it's working and reducing numbers, would you still scrap it? And he said yes. Right? So that's the choice. Right? Our plan that's working, stick with it, we can deliver the change, or you just go back to square one. And on your other question, just briefly on the Houthis, I want to try and take as many as I can. Look, as I've said in Parliament earlier, the situation is concerning. The rise in attacks on commercial shipping is both illegal and causing enormous disruption to the global economy and putting innocent lives at risk. It was right that we took action to protect both interests and lives. And together with allies, we've been very clear in our condemnation of their behaviour, and we'll continue to urge them to desist from carrying out what are illegal attacks and putting innocent people's lives at risk. Next, can we go to Sky?
Thank you, Beth Rigby. Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, you say that the party's united, you've won the vote, but several letters of no confidence in you have been submitted on the back of the events of last night. What is your message to those colleagues who look at this bill and think that you, with now trust-level poll ratings, are the wrong man for the job?
I said, I'm interested in sticking with the plan that I set out to the British people because that plan is working. Right? It is delivering real change, and if we stick with that plan, we'll be able to build a brighter future for everyone's families in this country, a renewed sense of pride in our nation, and the progress that we have made is demonstrable. Right? As I said, last year was a tricky year. Recovering from the legacy of COVID, backlogs in our public services, the impact of the war in Ukraine on energy prices, but we are now pointing in the right direction. Progress is being made. We've now had 5 months where wages have been rising faster than prices. People have started to see the benefit in mortgage rates of those coming down. Inflation has fallen, as I said, from over 11% to 4%. And because of that progress, we were able to deliver a very significant tax cut for tens of millions of people in work. Now, obviously, progress on the boats is there, but we need to go further. But like my main message is, the plan is working, right? Across the board, you can see that progress is being made, and our job is to stick to that plan, deliver for the country, and the alternative, as I said, is clear. You know, Keir Starmer has had 4 years to set out an alternative, and he hasn't done so, right? This is someone who is just sniping from the sidelines, can't tell you what he's going to do. Crucially, can't tell you how he's going to pay for a £28 billion green spending spree, which is just going to mean everyone's taxes are going to go up at a time that we're now starting to cut them, right? So there's a very clear choice, and I think the Conservative Party is completely united in wanting to deliver for the country, cut their taxes, and crucially to stop the boats. Next, can we go to Channel 4?
Thank you, Prime Minister. The habit of the Lords is not to actually stop legislation, particularly the government, the all sort of majority, but to delay it. So assuming you do get your bill put into law by the spring, can you 100% guarantee a plane will take off to Rwanda before the general election?
You can look at my actions. We had the Supreme Court ruling middle of November, and within a matter of weeks after that happened, we negotiated and signed a treaty with Rwanda and brought fresh legislation to Parliament that had its first vote as well and was supported. Right, so that gives you a sense, I hope, of the urgency with which we are attacking this problem. I've been crystal clear that we want to do this as quickly as possible. You can see the urgency with which James and Michael and the team are operating, and it's now up to the House of Lords. Right. I think the country has been very clear that this is a priority. We've been very clear that this is a priority for us, and Parliament, the elected Parliament, has also, with a very strong majority last night, supported this legislation. I think it's incumbent now on the House of Lords to recognise that, to pass this legislation unamended as quickly as possible so that we can then start getting flights up and running. And what I would say is, we are not waiting for that moment. We are working hard already to do all the planning that would be required to get those flights off in preparation for that day. There's a lot that will go into that, but I want people to know that we have been working on it, we're intensifying the work on that, because we are determined to start getting flights off so that we can implement this deterrent. And so my message to the House of Lords would be, look at the majority last night, they can see what a priority this is for the country. We are very confident this legislation is robust and compliant with all our obligations and will crucially do the job, and now we just need to get on with it. Next, Times.
Mark Dayton from the Times. Your legal advice explicitly states, and I'll quote, not to comply with Rule 39 would be a breach of international law, and this could be very crucial in terms of whether flights do take off this year. So will you seek new legal advice, or are you prepared to breach international law in order to get those flights off?
Now, I've been crystal clear repeatedly that I won't let a foreign court stop us from getting flights off and getting this deterrent up and running. The bill specifically contains a power and makes it clear that ministers are the ones that make these decisions. Parliament has supported that. There's also, the bill makes expressly clear that the domestic courts should respect that decision. And very simply, we would not have that clause. I would not have put that clause in the bill if I was not prepared to use it. So look, if you're asking me, are there circumstances in which I will ignore Rule 39s? And the answer is clearly yes. It is important that we fix this problem. We believe that we have done absolutely everything right. Now, of course, there will always be individual circumstances where people rightly would expect us to examine the facts, but are there circumstances in which I'm prepared to move ahead in the face of Rule 39? The answer is clearly yes, because it's important that we grip this problem. As I said, we've made progress on this issue. The plan is working, but we've got to stick to the plan so that we can finish the job, and that's what we're going to do. Next, could we go to the Eye?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Hugo Jai from the Eye. One of your other priorities that you mentioned just now is cutting taxes. Are you confident that you can continue to cut taxes in the budget and beyond, given the very tight fiscal situation, very large stock of debt and looming squeeze on public services?
Without speculating on future budgets, which as a former Chancellor I would prefer that Prime Ministers didn't do, our priority is to cut taxes when it's responsible to do so. And again, this is a good illustration of where our plan is delivering for the country. As I said, because of the decisions we've made, inflation last year more than halved from just over 11% when I took office to 4% as of yesterday. Right? And so that didn't happen by accident. That happened because this government was prepared to take the right long-term decisions for this country, even though they're not easy. Right? You can contrast our leadership with that of Keir Starmer. Right? We're prepared to do the right things for the country, even if they're difficult, and not take the easy way out. That's how you deliver real change for people. And now, because of that, because we control borrowing, we control welfare, we've got controlled inflation, we were able to cut people's taxes. And just to put it in context, for someone on an average salary of £35,000, that's a tax cut worth £450 that kicked in just a couple of weeks ago. So it's meaningful. And as I said, we want to keep cutting people's taxes because we believe that people should be able to keep more of their own money. I want to make sure that this is a country where hard work is rewarded. Those are things I believe in, because it's important to ask why. Right? This is not just about the extra pennies and pounds in your bank account at the end of the month. This is about our values, and my values are that this is a country where hard work should be rewarded. And that's the kind of country that I want to build. That's why we want to keep cutting people's taxes. And again, choice is clear. Stick with us. Plan's working. It's already cut your tax, and we will be able to keep doing that. The alternative is the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer, once again, can't tell anybody how he plans to pay for his £28 billion green spending spree. Can't tell anyone. So what does that mean? That means everyone's taxes are going to go up. Right? So that's a choice at the next election. Do you want to stick with the plan that's delivering tax cuts for you, delivering financial security, a country where work is rewarded? The alternative, £28 billion of borrowing that the Labour Party can't tell you how they're going to pay for, which just means your taxes are going up. The choice is very clear. That would be back to square one on this question of taxes. Next, we go to the Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Jack Elson from The Sun. Just back onto the ECHR, you just said that you would be prepared to overrule Rule 39 orders in some circumstances. The problem is that many of your MPs don't think that when push comes to shove, you'll actually be tough enough to do it. So can you convince them by laying down some red lines in which you would actually be overruling Strasbourg judges?
So look, I'll go back to what I said before. I specifically put a clause in the bill that makes it clear that it is ministers that make those decisions. I wouldn't have put that clause in the bill if I wasn't prepared to use it. Now, of course, there will always be individual circumstances, as even those who have debated this issue over the past couple of days acknowledge there will always be individual circumstances where it will be right that facts are considered, but ultimately it's for ministers to decide. I've been very clear that I won't let a foreign court stop us from getting flights off and establishing this deterrent, because we believe, with all the checks and processes that we've put in place with this bill, that we are acting in complete accordance with everything that is required of us. All the safeguards that we've got mean that we have behaved properly, carefully. Parliament will have spoken and made sure that it's Parliament's will as well once this bill passes. So that's why I can say confidently that I will make sure that I get this deterrent up and running. I wouldn't have put this in if I wasn't prepared to use it. And as I said, are there circumstances in which I would use it? Of course there are, because I want to make sure that we can resolve this issue and stop the boats. We've made good progress, but I want to make sure that we finish the job, and that requires getting Rwanda up and running. Right, next, go to the Daily Mail.
Thanks, PM. When's the first flight to Rwanda going to go? Because people are sick of empty promises on this. You said before it's going to be Easter. Is it still going to be Easter? Has it slipped to the summer? Can you even guarantee that a flight will go this year?
Yeah. Look, Jason, what I can tell you is I want to see this happen as soon as practically possible. Of course I do, right? And that's why James and Michael and the team worked incredibly hard after we got the Supreme Court judgment in the middle of November to not just sign a brand new treaty with Rwanda, negotiate and sign, but then also introduce new legislation into Parliament and have it voted on before Christmas. That happened in a matter of weeks, right? So that should give you a sense that we are not messing around here, because we're also frustrated and fed up, right? I share the frustration the British people have. I said I wanted to end this legal merry-go-round and just get on with this at this point. So we're working as fast and as quickly as we can, and the question really is for the House of Lords, right? And that's the question, is will the House of Lords understand the country's frustration, see the will of the elected House, and move as quickly as we have to support this legislation so we can get it on the statute books and then get flights up and running. And as I said previously, we're already doing the operational work that's required to make sure that we can get flights up. And this is one part of a plan that is working, we're carrying on doing all the other things that are meaning that we can get boat numbers down. Working with other countries to smash crime gangs upstream, interdict boats and engines as they travel across the continent, make sure that we strengthen our returns agreements, continue to find those who are working here illegally and return those, work through the backlog so that we can empty hotels. We just announced and delivered on the first 50 hotel closures, 50 hotels returned to local communities. More of that is coming. That's because we've doubled the number of caseworkers and tripled their productivity. So we cleared more asylum decisions last year than at any point in the last 20 years. Right? And I can go on, right? There are a lot of things that are happening here, and that plan is working. We are making progress, and that's why it's so important we stick to this plan, because it will deliver what the British people want, which is proper security for them and their families in our country.
When?
As I said, it's a question for the House of Lords to pass this as quickly as possible. We're doing everything we can to work as quickly as possible, and we will be ready to go. I'll turn to The Guardian next.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Pippa Currer from The Guardian. 32% of those whose asylum claims were withdrawn last year have disappeared. Now, we hear lots about you being a details man, so how do you expect to find them? And are you concerned that the Rwanda bill might result in thousands more desperate people disappearing in the UK to avoid being deported?
So, Pippa, I'm not sure exactly what numbers you're referring to. I had seen some yesterday.
To the Home Affairs Select Committee after...
So the vast majority of people in that cohort of 17,000 either have already been removed or are in the process of moving on or have made another claim. So that's what's going on there. And look, more generally, because there's been some comment about this, I'm not going... I think it's absolutely the right thing that once someone's asylum claim has been denied, they absolutely should be withdrawn from the process. They should not have access to public support, to public funds. And if they are then at that point not reporting back to the Home Office as they're meant to, then immigration enforcement should absolutely do everything that they can to identify these people, detain them and send them back. And that's what we've done last year. So we had a 70% increase in illegal immigration enforcement raids, thousands of arrests, and we returned over 20,000 people. And I think that's what the British people would expect us to do. Like when people are in the process and ultimately their claim is denied, like very quickly, people would expect us to be able to identify them, find them, and where we can, return them. And that is exactly what we're doing. And I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. But again, doesn't happen by accident. It's because we have a plan. We put that plan in place and we worked hard to deliver it. And that plan is working. And we will continue to do that this year. As I said, Rwanda is important, but all these other things are important too. And we're delivering across the board. And that is the progress that would be unwound. Right? That's the choice at the election. All the things that we're doing that are delivering progress, like we would go back to square one, because the Labour Party does not have a plan on any of these issues, and that's why there's a clear choice when the time comes. And next we go to The Express.
Thank you. Steph Sparrow from The Express. What are the consequences for the rebels in your party? If they don't lose the whip, why not? Can they rebel without any consequences?
I think on this issue, the Conservative Party last night was united in wanting to stop the boats. And you saw that very clearly. And it's right that we debate this, and that's because people are frustrated and passionate about this issue, right? Because the country is frustrated and exercised about this issue, and they want it fixed. So it's understandable that people have got strong opinions. It's understandable that they want to do everything necessary to solve this issue. I share that frustration and I share that energy, and that's why we are doing everything that we can. But last night, the Conservative Party came together and is absolutely united in wanting to stop the boats. And the contrast could not be clearer, because the Labour Party, to a person, opposed this legislation. Right, so the question and the focus now has got to be on our plan, which is already delivering. We are already making progress, with the numbers down last year by over a third, or what the Labour Party are saying, where there is absolutely no plan, would take us back to square one. And that's worse, because I don't actually believe Keir Starmer wants to resolve this issue. As I said, when he was asked if he would stick with the Rwanda scheme, even when it was up and running and working, he said he would still scrap it. Right? I think that tells you what you need to know. Right? This is someone who says, oh, he's interested in smashing the gangs. But then the question I still haven't had an answer to is, why then does the Labour Party vote against the powers in our previous act, which have allowed us to arrest 873 criminals and people smugglers who have now been sentenced to over 350 years in jail? Right? Those are new powers that we passed to smash the gangs. that are leading to people being taken off the streets and put in jail, which all contributes to a deterrent effect, but the Labour Party voted against that. So Keir Starmer will say one thing and do another thing, right? And that is symptomatic of his overall approach to leadership, right? This is an election year, and the choice of that election is going to be clear, right? We have got a plan. That plan is working. If we stick with it, we can deliver a brighter future for the country, renewed pride in our country, and the alternative is that we go back to square one because he can't tell you what he's going to do because he doesn't have a plan. We've got time for one last one, LBC.
Hello, Natasha Clark, LBC. Thank you, Prime Minister. Rwanda has said that they are willing to pay back some of the money that we gave them if no one is flown there. Can you promise that you will fight to get every penny of taxpayers' money back if no flights go off to Rwanda?
Natasha, I'm fighting every day to get the flights off to Rwanda, right? That is what James is doing, that's what Michael is doing, that's what I'm doing, because we want to stop the boats. We have made good progress, the plan is working, the numbers are down by over a third last year for the first ever time. That shows you that the plan is working, but if we stick with the plan, we can get this done. We need an effective working deterrent. That's what the Rwanda scheme delivers. That's not just my view, that's the view of many eminent lawyers, former Supreme Court judges, all of whom have said that our plan will work. So as I said, the question now is for the Labour Party in the House of Lords, will they support this bill so we can get it on the statute book as quickly as possible so that we can start the flights? Because that's what we need to do. That's how we're going to stop the boats. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.